Now let's talk about confronting the Indo-Pacific permit. This is a beautiful fish. They're certainly abundant on a lot of these fisheries over there. And it turns out they're still just as tricky as their Caribbean cousins. So it's nice to know how to approach them, because sometimes you're just in the middle of a bone fishing session and here comes two permit right through the middle of them. And it's like, oh gosh, what do I do? The thing that can get in everyone's head is fly selection. Certainly there are some that have been more consistent than others. But if you're in that bonefish situation, just throw your bonefish fly. I can't tell you how many gotchas and Christmas Island specials have caught some of these Indo-Pacific permit in the past. At the end of the day, it's just better to get a shot than suddenly clipping off your fly, trying to find that Alphonse crab, tie it on, and the permit's gone. So just keep that in mind, because certainly you'll find yourself alone at some point. The guide's with the other angler or something. Just give it a shot and stick to the same program you were with the bonefish, because they're feeding on the same the stuff that the bones are in that area. But yeah, you can find these fish in a variety of ways, and generally it's going to be pretty shallow water fishing. Anywhere from, let's call it shin deep to waist deep would be the deepest. And their behavior is going to tell me a lot about how I'm going to be presenting to them. So let's first talk about kind of your classic wandering fish. He's scavenging, so he's kind of slowly cruising. You might see him dip tail and then keep moving, dip tail, and just not really drawing a straight line to one direction. And it seems like he's eaten anything he can find. I love this fish. This fish is kind of open-minded with what its forage is going to be, and it's going to take advantage of whatever looks good to them. So, when I'm casting to this fish, it's important to try to catch him off guard, potentially when he is tailing. So when you see that head go down, tail come up, he's now really focused on what he's foraging on. And that's a really good time to insert your fly or be making that final cast. Your fly is dropping in the column once he's lifted up his head. Now, distance is a little bit of a variable. Certainly you can try to, throw it right on the dinner plate in front of him, but you might get an adverse reaction. So, I would say first start with a cast that's 3 to 5 foot in front of him, still a little space where that fly plop is not going to spook him, and it's also going to give it enough time to sink into the zone where that fish has now brought his head up and said, oh, here's the next shrimp or crab that I'm going to eat. I've also had fish, though, turn around and eat the fly right off of, a fly that landed behind them, too. So it's a little bit variable. Again, listen to the guides here. They're going to know those fish's particular behaviors wherever you're fishing them and kind of how to approach them. I'm going to land that fly 3 to 5 feet ahead, see what its reaction is. As it's dropping, that dropping motion often is enough of a trigger for a permit. It doesn't necessarily need to be a twitch or anything like that. So I've made my shot out there. I've dropped my rod tip just like the bonefish. And now I'm just doing longer slides, longer pulls, just to grab tension. Okay, I'm trying to get the slack out of my fly line and get ready for this permit. As it's dropping, he has not seen it, but now he's still kind of traveling in your direction. At that point, I'm going to do another slide. These slides are about a foot long, maybe a little bit longer, 1.5 feet, 2 foot. But now I'm just trying to draw it away. I'm not trying to fish this fly into the permit at all. I'm always trying to get it directionally away, just like a prey would from a predator. And now I'm watching the reaction of this permit. They are going to be either very scared right away and tell you, they're going to pretend like they didn't see the fly, even though the fly is right in front of them, or they're going to start showing interest, and you're going to see this, very snaky action where they're going to now be very enticed by what you're doing. Stick to the same game plan as you do with the bones, and that you're trying to tease the cat with the yarn, just keeping it just far enough away. And I would say just less aggressive, really no pops. I really want to keep it nice and smooth with my strips. At that point, when the fish eats, it's not necessarily something you always feel. They have a very unique way of feeding, of throwing their prey into the back of their mouth, where they have 2 crusher plates where they're going to crush their food before they swallow it. And so if you ever feel like you got a nibble from a permit, he fully engulfed it and then spit it back out on you. So you really got to keep control of that tension, make sure there's no slack in your line. And so if you feel anything at all, it's really important to just follow through with that strip and keeping that nice rod tip low. One other kind of body behavior you might see, where you might not necessarily feel the fish, is you're going to see him snaking, and then all of a sudden you're going to see this kind of quick speed up and stop. At that point, he's vacuumed it up most likely too, and it's a good idea to just kind of follow through with a longer strip. Next scenario I would say is the tailing fish that is very focused in one area. And so you might see one or a couple fish that are just literally stuck on a dime. They're not moving. These ones are pretty tough. They've found a food source that they're really interested in, and it's going to have to look a lot like, your fly's going to have to look a lot like that forage that they're currently focused on. Otherwise, they're going to pretend like they don't even see your fly. So this could be anything from shrimp to crab to mollusks to urchins to brittle stars, you name it. There's a lot of different things that these permit eat. And so you might be going through quite a few different flies before you get this fish to go. Now this is where I am going to bring my cast in much closer. As they're tailing, again, as they've put their head down, that's a great time to try to insert the fly. And that is when I'm going to put it, this far in front of him, really close to him. So as he brings his head up, he sees that next piece of forage, and hopefully it's the same one he's been looking for. Boom, on. Love it. But yeah, it can be tricky because you're trying to match the hatch, and if there's more than one eye on the job, it can be, extra security guards. The last scenario I'll talk about, which is probably my favorite because they're the most gullible, is finding those fish on stingrays. This is often happening on the incoming spring tides, or incoming neeps as well, depends on the time of year. But once the tides have reached their highest and these rays or sand sharks or nurse sharks can get up onto these sand flats, and often then the permit accompany of them looking for the food that are kind of spraying away from the big main predator. So if you can find this scenario, typically it's really predictable in the direction they're heading. Like if it's with a shark or a moving stingray, or if you find one of these things mudding, then you've got permit that are doing this. Often it's more than one, and they are just super addicted to whatever's happening on that stingray. So typically you get quite a few shots on them. So yeah, you're just trying to time that revolution. They might be making a bigger loop, and then you see them turn back. I typically, right as they're making the turn to come back in, is when I'm trying to insert that fly. And again, having it drop through the column nice and slow. I'm not trying to strip it away right away. So as he comes in, hopefully he's noticed it, and you can try your first long slide and see if he engages. If he doesn't, just pay attention to his circle. Again, he's going to come back around, and you're just going to keep giving it a try. Anyway, that's a couple of great ways to approach the permit out there.